and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
Today I'll be continuing with my college football game-by-game prediction and roster discussion videos. Today I'll be doing the Coach Prime Colorado Clown Show. So Colorado in 2025 had the 35th ranked recruiting class in the country. They had recruited 14 players, which was a lot better than Deion Sanders' first recruiting class in 2024 because it didn't exist. And like always, Deion Sanders loaded up with transfers. He brought in 27 transfers. Colorado had the 23rd ranked transfer portal group in the country this year, which was a lot lower than in his first two years. Only two of those transfer players had a 4-star rating. And I'll say it again, like I've said before, Deion Sanders had one goal in his first 2 years at Colorado, and that wasn't to win games. It was to put up a ton of passing yards to get Shador Sanders drafted in the first round, which he failed miserably at with Shador Sanders getting drafted only in the 5th round. And the only reason Deion Sanders is still at Colorado is because no one else offered him a job. He tried to leave to go to the NFL, but no one would hire him. And no college team is going to hire him because they don't want him because he's not a real football coach. But both coordinators do return. And on the offensive side of the ball, they were pretty good here overall last year, averaging 29.8 points per game. But they're going to average less than that this year, I think. So the quarterback this year will be Caden Salter from Liberty. He was a 2-year starter at Liberty. So he was Liberty's starting quarterback in 2023 when they had the 13-0 season before getting destroyed by Oregon in a bowl game. But that year he was one of the group of five's best quarterbacks. He threw for 2,876 yards and 32 touchdowns and completed 61% of his passes and only threw 6 interceptions and averaged a good 9.9 yards per throw. But in 2024, he was not as good. He played and started 11 games and he only threw for 1,886 yards and his completion percentage went down to only 56.3%, and his yards per throw average went down to just 7.2, and he threw 15 touchdown passes that year. But he's nothing like Shador Sanders. He's a better runner than he is a passer. He's not a very good passer. And I know you may think that because at Colorado, his run game has been non-existent in Deion Sanders' first 2 years there, that it's nice to have a running quarterback now. But Colorado's offense needs a quarterback that can throw for 300 plus yards per game because their offensive line is so horrible. And Caden Salter is not that quarterback, I don't think. I don't think he's going to be a good fit for this offense. So Colorado's offensive line only has one starter coming back, and they're going to be starting 4 transfers. It was horrible last year. They gave up 43 sacks, and they averaged only 2.5 yards per run because the run blocking was so bad. And I expect it to be just as bad this year. Colorado's was last in the country in rushing, only averaging 65.2 rushing yards per game. And it doesn't even matter what running backs they have because Derrick Henry would look like a bad running back even with this offensive line. Now, Colorado's rushing yards will probably go up some this year because they have a running quarterback, but that probably will just mean where they average like 100 yards rushing per game instead of 65. The run game is still going to be terrible, and that's not going to be near enough to make up for how much worse their passing is going to be. At wide receiver, they lose everybody. Travis Hunter, who was, of course, their best wide receiver, and they also lose LeJohntay Wester, who had over 900 yards receiving last year, and Will Shepherd, who had over 600 yards, and Jimmy Horn, who had 441 last year. They're all off to the NFL. Now, they did bring in four transfer wide receivers, but none of these receivers were great where they came from. They do have, though, a five-star quarterback coming in, Julian Lewis, who was one of the top quarterback recruits of 2025. And he's a pocket passer like Shador Sanders was, but he won't be the starter this year because he has no college experience. At least he won't be at the beginning. Now, I could see them starting him later on in the season if Caden Salter struggles. But I do expect Julian Lewis to play some outside of garbage time this year. And Colorado won't have much garbage time this year except for when they're getting blown out. So now on the defensive side of the ball, they were pretty good here in points allowed per game, only giving up 20.8. Now, they still struggled against the run. They ranked 71st at stopping the run, giving up 151.4 rushing yards per game. But their secondary was a lot better than the year before, which is why their defense was so much better. The secondary was actually pretty good. They ranked 40th at stopping the pass, giving up a 200.5 yards passing per game. But their defense only returns four starters. The defensive line is going to struggle again this year. So Colorado runs the 4-2-5 defense most of the time, and they do have one really good player coming back on the defensive line, Arden Walker, who didn't start last year but played in all 13 games, and he had 33 tackles and 4.5 sacks and 27 total quarterback pressures and a forced fumble. And they do bring in a transfer defensive lineman from Alabama, Jaheim Otis. He was the top defensive lineman in the transfer portal. He was a four-star recruit coming out of high school, and he only played in 4 games last year because he redshirted. But in the 2 years before that, he played in 25 games and started 13 games and had a total of 55 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 4 pass breakups, and 8 total quarterback pressures. And then at linebacker, they lose both starters, but they brought in two transfer linebackers who were pretty good players where they came from. They brought in Reginald Hughes from Jacksonville State, who had in 13 games last year 82 tackles and 4.5 sacks and 26 total quarterback pressures. And from UTSA, Martavius French, who had last year 80 tackles and he had a sack and 14 total quarterback pressures and 3 pass breakups. And in the secondary, of course, they lose their two best players, Travis Hunter at cornerback and Shiloh Sanders at safety. But everybody else is back. They've got cornerbacks DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge coming back. McKinney last year had 62 tackles, 9 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, one for a touchdown, and a forced fumble. Here's a clip of an interception by him.
2nd and 10. Wilson looking in trouble. Wilson buys time, backs up, lets it go, picked off.
And Hodge last year played in 9 games because he had a season-ending injury, but he had in that 33 tackles and 7 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. And they've got coming back at safety Carter Stoutmeyer, who had last year 43 tackles, 7 pass breakups, 2 quarterback pressures, and a forced fumble. I think their defense will be okay. I don't think it'll be as good as it was last year, but Colorado, I think, is going to struggle this year because of their offense is going to struggle to score points. So now for the game-by-game predictions, starting with Georgia Tech, I would expect Colorado to play both quarterbacks in this game, but this is not a good matchup, I don't think, for Colorado because Georgia Tech is not a very talented team, but they are a well-coached team, and they like to run the football and control the clock and keep their defense rested, and I think they'll chew up the clock in this game, and Colorado won't be able to stop Georgia Tech's run game, and I think this could get ugly for Colorado. I've got to go with Georgia Tech. Now Delaware. I think this will be a blowout win for Colorado. It'll probably be the only blowout win for them. Because Delaware is an FCS team. And now on the road at Houston. This one I could see Colorado losing because it is a Friday night road game. And the coach at Houston, he has won everywhere that he's been, except for at Houston, but he's only been there for 1 year. But I still think Houston is at least a year away from being good again. I'm going to go with Colorado to get this win. But I do think this is going to be a very close game. And now Wyoming, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Colorado loses this one. Wyoming, I think will play them close, but I'm going to go with Colorado because Wyoming is a group of 5 team. And now BYU, I think this is a bad matchup for Colorado because if Colorado's defense has a strength again, it will be the secondary. And BYU, I don't think is going to want to throw a lot this year because Retzloff left them at quarterback. They're going to want to run with their really good running back, LJ Martin, and I think they'll be able to do that in this game. BYU's offensive line isn't going to be bad. In Colorado, even though BYU's defense I don't think will be great this year, I still think is going to struggle to score points in this game. I'm going to go with BYU to get this win. And now on the road at TCU. So in Deion Sanders' first game as Colorado's pretend head coach, they upset TCU, and TCU was a bad team that year, like Colorado was. But this I think is going to be a good TCU team, not as good as they were in 2022, but at least as good as they were last year. I think TCU is going to get revenge on Colorado for that. And, and Iowa State, I think, is going to be a loss. That you saw that in my Iowa State video if you watched it. Iowa State's offense, I think, will be the difference in this game. I think defensively, both teams are pretty similar, but Iowa State has a much better quarterback than Colorado does, and their line and run game, I think, is going to be much better. So I think Iowa State wins by a couple of scores. And now on the road at Utah. Offensively, Utah's transfer quarterback is pretty similar to Colorado's. He's a group of five quarterback that is a really good runner, but not a great passer. But the difference offensively with these two teams is going to be that Utah's offensive line is so much better than Colorado's is, and I think that will make Utah's offense better than Colorado's. And Utah always plays a good defense, and I think they'll play a really good defense in this game, and I think they'll beat Colorado. And now I'm going to give them wins against both Arizona and on the road at West Virginia, because even though it seems unlikely that Colorado would win both of those. Neither one of these two teams are very good, especially not Arizona. Arizona's a team that I think will be looking for a new coach after this year. I do think that Colorado will win three conference games this year. So now Arizona State, a team that I think is going to have a big line of scrimmage advantage on both sides over Colorado, and they've got the better quarterback. And Jordan Tyson at wide receiver for Arizona State is kind of like Travis Hunter was for Colorado at wide receiver last year. And I think Arizona State will be able to run the football well in this game. And I don't think Colorado's offense will be able to score very much in this game. I think Arizona State wins this one pretty big. And now on the road at Kansas State, a bad matchup for Colorado, I think, because the head coach of Kansas State, Chris Kleiman, is big on controlling the line of scrimmage, and I think they'll do that in this game. I think Kansas State will run for over 200 yards in this game, and Avery Johnson, I think, is a better quarterback than Colorado's Caden Salter is, and Kansas State usually plays pretty good defense. I think they will in this game. I don't think Colorado will score much. I think Kansas State will beat Colorado fairly easily. So I've got Colorado finishing the year at 5-7 overall and at 3-6 in the conference. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe. It's free, and you don't have to show your identity to do it. And I'll be back very soon.